What's up, you beauties? Welcome to High and Wide Hockey YouTube channel, episode 7 of season 7. I'm your host, Jim Iacovone, joined as always by the one and only Jack Smith. If you guys are catching us live on YouTube, make sure to smash that subscribe button and hit the alert so you guys never miss a show. And for all you podcast listeners out there, don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify so you're first in line when the newest episodes drop. Jack, Flyer season kicked off about a week or so ago. First home game was over the weekend, Saturday night. A lot of buzz in the air. Certainly felt like a home opener. Parking lots were packed early, like 3, 4 o'clock. A lot of people tailgating. And speaking of tailgating, Jack, what can you tell us about fans of Philly?
That's funny you say that, Jim, because Flyers fans, we've got something special for you. Looking to make a game day experience to the next level? Then look no further of Fans of Philly. With over 14 years experience, they're the go-to team to putting together an unforgettable travel package for the die-hard Philly sports fan. Why Fans of Philly, you ask? Let's break it down for you. These guys have spent years building the best relationships with bars, hotels, teams, transportation, you name it. Every trip they plan gets better. And trust me, they'll make sure your experience is top-notch. Whether it's scouting out the perfect hotel, finding the hottest nightlife, or securing the best seats in the arena, Fans of Philly has it all figured out. They know how to make your trip an absolute blast, so head on over to fansofphilly.com, that's phfansofphilly.com, and book your next Flyers road trip today.
Great job there, Jack. What a professional.
The whole thing. I think I screwed up the very first line. Go back.
Really,
other than that, not bad.
Earning the paycheck tonight with the Fans of Philly read, knocking it out of the park.
Check them out, baby.
Yeah, check them out there.
You can see the pointless Cutter Gauthier soon.
There you go. I would like to talk about Cutter Gauthier at some point. I almost called him your nickname there for a second. It just came out. I didn't even mean to. It just rolled off the tongue that way. So
he'll do that to you.
Let's get to Cutter at some point tonight, because that'll be fun.
Oh, he's special.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So the Flyers opened had their home opener Saturday night, and it was underwhelming to say the least. You know, it was it felt like a celebration. You know, leading up to the game, as we mentioned, the parking lot was packed. You know, I left home around 4 to get up there like 4:30 to beat the traffic. And while there was not, traffic, the lot was full. And that was exciting to see. You know, there's a lot of tailgating going on. It almost looked like, I don't want to say it was as big as the Eagles tailgate, but it didn't look like your typical Flyers tailgate, at least not from recent years. And, that got me excited. There was a buzz in the air, a buzz walking into the building, a buzz when I got into the building. And there was sort of a buzz when people were coming to their seats. It was fun. And it was the loudest that I think I've heard the building at points in the 4 years that I've been there. There was excitement. Matvei Michkov's first game home as a Philadelphia Flyer. This is the year people think, at least Flyers fans think, that maybe they could make a jump in the standings a little bit, and unfortunately, the team was flat. And I'm going to throw this out there right now. Like, the scheduling didn't help them at all. And I know a lot of people don't like to hear that because it's an excuse right off the bat, right? But it's a normal thing. And I'll have a story at some point during the episode, because I happened to be talking to Jordan Hall about this in the bathroom. And let's just say a higher up Flyer exec and maybe one of the most beloved Flyers at all time happened to be taking a piss right in front of me. So they were listening to what we were saying. So I'll bring that up at some point during the show, because it's kind of funny. It made me laugh. Thank God we weren't saying anything negative. But so Jack, what were your thoughts watching this team Saturday night? I know, like, you're an emotional guy in a good way, right? So I know you were probably feeling like really excited to watch these guys at home. And then, we had what we had Saturday night. What was going through your mind?
It was one of those things where I was excited. I was ready to rock. And just by their first period effort and just how the play wasn't typically, it was pretty much all Vancouver, in the early goings. I kind of saw this coming. I thought they might, halfway through the game, turn the ship around, or at least show some signs of life. And that just didn't happen. And it's one of those things where when that happens and you're seeing it happen, you got to think back to kind of what you just brought up with the travel schedule. We were warned about that. They are human. Look, it's an excuse. It's 100% it's an excuse, and every team's got to deal with it. So they're not getting a pass. But if I look at how flat they were in front of their home crowd, their home opener with the team rocking, like Jim alluded to, since God knows when they were actually considered a decent team. One of the most watched preseasons in history of the team. Yeah, I get that. I was hoping that some of that energy would wake the Flyers up a little bit, but listening to you and Martinez pointed it out even more. He's like, well, they probably should have Saturday off and play on Sunday because they're getting back late on Thursday or Friday rather. You're saying hi to the family, having dinner, taking a snooze, waking up, doing the same thing and hitting the ice. Like it makes sense. Not an excuse. They got to be able to figure that stuff out. Great teams typically do. They have enough depth to get through that. As they're also starting off the season. So while the travel itself sucks, it's not like they're beaten down or worn out or anything. So I was hoping the crowd, being rocking like that would get them going. And it just unfortunately wasn't the case. But the whole beginning of the season been pretty flat outside of the first game, so it was also to see that. And then this is like, well, I don't expect them to suddenly perform good when the scheduling's against them the way it is. So it also is one of those eye roll. I kind of saw this coming, which really sucks when it's your home opener and everybody's that hyped. You got those typical, casual Flyers fans who like to chime in. Oh, well, the kids are going to save the team, right? Just like last time, right, Jack? Just like Hextall, right? The kids, play the kids, Mishkov, and I'm just like, don't even talk to me right now. Like, we're not going to do this. So I think they're going to, straighten the ship, figure some things out. We have some questions to be answered about Luchanko, about Fedotov. Don't get me wrong. Hopefully, I believe Sealer is going to find his way back into the lineup, it looks like. Mm-hmm. So maybe things can get back on track a little bit. But look, at the end of the day, teams played 5 games. They have 3 points, and they're still looking for the regulation win. That's not good.
No. When you put it like that, and that's the reality of it, yeah, they were pretty slow coming out of the gate here. They coughed up some leads. They got some problems. And the beginning of the season is usually a little bit sloppy for teams. I don't know if we expected that so much from the Flyers to start sloppy, right? Like, because it's basically the same team as last year. They knew what they were doing at camp. We heard they had a really good camp. We knew it was going to be a tough West Coast trip, but I think we expected at least the forward group to look a little bit better than they do. Even the defense didn't. They looked kind of out of sorts, and not all that can be attributed to the absence of Nick Sealer, at least in my opinion. And as we talked about almost ad nauseum at this point, the backup goaltender position, which we'll get to. So yeah, I think a lot of what we were worried about, you mentioned the center depth. We talked about D at some point a little bit, and the goaltending. We saw a little bit of all that. We had kind of a buffet of fear throughout the last week or so. It was like, oh shit, that's a problem. We knew that. Oh shit, that problem's popping up. So look, they got a lot to work on. So maybe a little home cooking, maybe a couple nights at home. We'll get that fixed up. They'll be on the East Coast for at least another week or so, and we'll see. Maybe that's all they needed.
Fingers crossed, man.
So we're going to try something different for this show. We have the press conference from John Tortorella today, just in case you guys haven't seen it. And what we're going to do is we're going to dissect each answer from Torts, because I felt watching it that he talked about some key points with the team. He mentioned Sealer came up at some point. Luchanko came up at some point. Ivan Fedotov came up for a second, which Tortorella's answer is pretty telling about that. So, I definitely want to mention that. Couturier obviously came up. So a lot of, really good questions by media in attendance, but also Torts didn't hide anything in his responses, in my opinion. So let's kind of dive into that. We're going to go question at a time, and we'll start it and stop it. So here we go, guys.
That he brings, does that element, as much as whatever skill set he has, and you can kind of get the pairs the way you want them.
He's a good player. I think you get locked into just who he is, the emotion he brings, blocking shots and all that. But he's a good player. I think a lot of people forget. He plays against a lot of good people in the opposing teams, is a good partner for his other guy because he bails a lot of people out. He's a good player. I hope the day proceeds well, and hopefully we can get him back in.
All right, so that was in reference to Nick Seeler there, making his return tomorrow night against the Washington Capitals. Or at least that's how it looks anyway. He was in practice, paired back up with Jamie Drysdale. And look, that was a fear for me when he was hurt, because they had 10 days in between the last preseason game, which I don't think Seeler played in. So he had even more time to get better, and the start of the regular season. And to me, that was weird that he was going to miss game one. And he wound up missing the entire road trip and then the first game back home. He's fine. It looks like he's on his way to returning back to the lineup tomorrow night. But Jack, your thoughts on Tortorella's response there for what Nick Seeler brings to the Flyers, and do you think he'll make that much of a difference? You're on mute there, by the way.
Thanks. Certainly sounds like Torts thinks it will. I mean, he can't wait to get him back. And I think a lot of what he said is true. Outside of the shot blocking and laying his body on the line, I think he can be pretty smart back on defense for the most part. Everybody makes their mistakes, but he's as close to a steady Eddie as you got back there on the defenseman side. And that's going to do dividends for this team, especially in certain situations and all situations. I think he's out there a lot against, like as Tortorella said, some really good players, and mitigates a lot of scoring chances and therefore goals. That'll definitely help out a guy like Fedotov, who, can't really stop a shot coming in from the blue line with no screening. So I do think you're going to see an immediate difference. And I think this is maybe, sometimes we criticize certain contracts and whatnot, and the jury's still out, but maybe he does mean more to this team than we realize, and he is better than we realize. A lot like Sean Walker was last year as well, so this may be one of those things. And I'm hoping this team can get back on track, and having him back in the lineup full time doing his thing is definitely a huge factor. I don't think any of us saw a guy who has a career blocking shots having a random block shot basically concuss his foot, because I've never heard of that before. He just loses feeling, and that's it. So sounds like he's close to coming back. He was in the line. I think Jordan. Jordan. What the hell is his last
Jordan
name?
Hall.
Thank you, Jordan Hall. Put the lineup up correct. He was skating. I want to say Jordan Wheel. That's why I was struggling a little bit. Here's a nice
Jordan Wheel. Wow.
Jordan Wheel.
PTSD.
Nice yes, too much of it. So I think it's going to be bigger than we realize, but there's a lot more to this team than that, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right. Let's see what the next response was from Torts there, because I think he went on for Seeler for another couple seconds.
Can that help the transition game too? So much of your offense last year was transition offense.
Yeah.
Can getting him back in maybe help Jamie, but help the defense group as a whole move the puck?
Absolutely, he's good at it. We talked about him last year. He bangs it around sometimes, but it gets up the ice quickly. Everything's done quick with him. So it's a part of our game that, after 5 games, I don't want to overstate it. We still have a lot of things to work on, but that's a part of the game we have to get better at, and he'll certainly help us.
John, you had Sean Couturier on a power play.
Okay. So again, he wraps up with Nick Seeler. It sounds like, Sealer's a bigger loss than I think we would have expected. You mentioned he blocks a lot of shots, Jack. And hey, if you have a guy blocking shots, if shots aren't even getting to Fedotov, that's a good thing. What Tortorella speaks of here, Sealer's not just a great locker room guy, and he's a guy that they miss in the locker room on the bench. He's an emotion guy. He gets the guys going. But also he's a hell of a hockey player. He's made a name for himself here. He got the contract and didn't take his foot off the gas when he got that contract. And maybe you wish you would have a little bit in the preseason. Like, you don't need to be blocking shots in the preseason, but the guy only knows one way, how to play the game. And you got to respect that, I think.
One of my favorite memories of Nick Seeler was in the preseason, going back to when we first brought him along. And I'm like, this Nick Seeler guy really stood out to me. He was like,
I remember that,
laying down in front of the net, like like what's his name in the goon? You know what I mean? Like, geez, I mean, at that point, he's trying to make the team, so it makes more sense to put your body on the line. But at the same time, you can only play one way. Like, this is who you are. It's the only way you know how to play. There is no letting off the gas. And another thing is, like, when a goalie like Fedotov like gives up bad goals, we talked about how demoralizing that can be to a team. You're down a goal, now you're down 2 goals, and that goal is like you have no confidence, and you're just like eye roll, like how are we ever going to get back into this game? That's probably what they felt like playing against Fedotov, because when a couple of those bad goals went in, they became deflated. You know, they really just could not get it back and going. Guy like Sealer, like no matter what the score is, he's like laying himself on the line. So as another player, you can have that moment of being disheartened and demoralized, sitting on the bench, and then immediately watching Nick Sealer lay down in front of a shot that goes off the inside of his thigh and flies off into the, into the seats. Like, that can turn it around. Like, geez, this guy's still giving it everything he's got. Like, we're not out of this. If it's easy to look at another guy dogging it after you just got hit, you just got demoralized, be like, yeah, screw it. But then when you look at somebody who's still putting it all on the line, it's easier to get back into it. So I think they're humans, and we talk about locker room and the elements and things like that, the intangibles. This is something that Sealer does bring to the team, and you alluded to it, and I could see it being in the locker room, but on ice as well. And it could go a long way, especially for this team that is very young team. That can go a long way.
Eric, let's not get carried away here, okay? Future Norris Trophy winner once he gets back. Relax a little bit here, Eric.
It is amazing when Walker leaves the lineup last year, what happens to the defense. Sealer was out at the same time too. And then this year, Sealer doesn't start the season, and like they're struggling back there. Like Zamula and Risto, like it's a very short sample size, but they irritate the piss out of me. I have serious questions about certain things other players do, like in certain situations, Sanheim. And if Sanheim is not with York and they have that camaraderie, like I don't know how bad Sanheim could be, which makes me not want to break up the D pairs. And it just, I see little things here and there, and they're a young team. At the end of the day, they're definitely a young team. They're making young mistakes, and I just hope this doesn't start to snowball. I don't think it will. I'm being dramatic. It's beginning of the season. Getting a steadying force like Sealer coming back at this after going basically 1-5 is huge. Or 1-4, excuse me.
All right, let's see what he's getting into next. And I think, so this is one of our bigger topics on the show. I think he gets asked about Sean Couturier, and this is where we can get into that conversation a little bit here, Jack. Here we go.
Back at center. How much are you looking for him to start chipping in off?
Yeah, I don't know if he, Lotz wasn't here today. I'm not sure if Sean will be there. Lotz, Sean, just like everybody else, has been up and down. I actually thought his best minutes, more involved, was playing on the wing. Had him on a checking line. We're going to use him against Miller's line a little bit here and there. I actually liked him there. I'm not sure what the lineup's going to be tomorrow. I really don't know. So, but
you have to have like 2 different lineups if Scott's here, if Scott's not here, and it's great for him, but makes your life a little more difficult.
Yeah. Well, I still got to check on guys that are banged up. We still got some nicks. We got through the practice. I'll talk to Tommy, our medical guy, and see where we go for tomorrow.
You've got a couple back-to-backs coming up, and your goaltending.
Okay. So you heard him talk about Coots briefly there, and Torts mentioned that he really liked him on the 4th line checking role. And, I think that's fine, but he's also making $8 million a year, right? So that factors in. Jack, your initial response, and not just to Torts' response there, but let's get into the overall conversation about, starting him on the 4th line, left wing, during his 800th game, the conversation that we were kind of talking about earlier in today's chat.
Yeah, so this is probably some of the most respect I've seen him show towards Coots. That's being a little dramatic. It's not like he's been outright disrespectful, but it is odd that that's not bury the lead or anything. But Coots found out he was 4th line wing like not that long before the game started. He's your captain. I don't understand the last minute informing of this guy who's been with the team for so long. all know he went through, he had the back thing he's been dealing with, trying to get back into shape, and then has another very serious core muscle surgery that typically takes up to a year to fully recover from. As Martinez pointed out, you have to break up the scar tissue and things like that. You know, like everybody knows this. There's nothing hidden. And to like treat him like that, like he's probably thinking, oh, at the worst, I'm a third line center, fourth line wing. Okay, who did I piss in your cornflakes? Like I have no idea why, you know. And towards his utilization of Coots to an extent makes sense, and he does have an overload of centers right now with everything. His love for Pairings and swapping out Cates and Luchanko and things of that nature. But it's very odd. Like I just felt like if you're dealing with a player like this, who you know is injured before the core muscle surgery and is definitely recovering from a very serious injury after the core muscle surgery. So two major surgeries. He's still trying to come back from the one before he has the other, essentially. And you know it's going to be a slow start because the history of the surgery has shown nothing but slow starts. And he's your captain. Why you're not like in lockstep with this guy with, look, this is what we're going to do. I understand you're the player, but I'm the coach. It's my responsibility to make sure this team wins. If you're unable to play at 100% because of your surgery and your recovery time period, I'm going to do this. So come to terms with it. I'm okay with the coach being stern and when the player is fully involved, but to just kind of like, I don't know, bamboozle him like this, like pull the hood over his eyes, but yep, fourth line winger, out of nowhere. It just goes back to last year when they healthy scratched an injured player just to embarrass him after they made him captain. Like, why are you going out of your way to look stupid here? You're infuriating the fan base, which I understand they don't care about. You know, but you're like making a decision that you know is going to piss off the players, piss off the fan base, piss off your captain, potentially drive a wedge between you and the coach, which is at this point an extension of management to a degree. We'll see. I have more on that later. But like, why are you going out of your way to do these things when you can be on the same page as your captain, which most successful teams are? Like, it's going out of your way to almost embarrass the guy. And whether it's like to erupt your team so that they'll rally against you. Well, it didn't work last year. They didn't pull it together and make the playoffs and win a round. They still lost on the last day of the season. Their last, 11 games are some of the worst we've seen in team history. So it's like, it didn't work. It's not working. You're being unfair to the guy. And I understand that Torts is a guy where like you show up to play, you play right, you play my way, you play hard. And he loves his centers to have speed. And Coots don't have that right now. But if there's like a reason why, and we know it's all out there, we all know. I'm not saying you need to start him as, first line center, but why are you being disrespectful? It just does not make sense.
So you made a lot of great points there, Jack. And, obviously I don't disagree with a lot of that, but I'm going to play some devil's advocate because, as I mentioned, when I see stuff like this, my mind goes, okay, where's the positive in this, right? Because as I mentioned, and I think we agree, he's not doing this because he doesn't like the guy, right? A lot of people out there go, he doesn't deserve it. He's being mean to Coots, yada, yada. And maybe he is, but there's a positive in there somewhere, right? Like, so what I try to do is, all right, I need to find the positive. What's he trying to accomplish here? What's the goal, right? And so the first thing that pops into my head is they're not getting what they need from Coots. They're not getting what they need from a lot of guys to start the season. But Coots is wearing the C. He's got the biggest contract on the team. I think if Travis Konecny's not making more now, he's a guy they need, quite frankly. The center position, you got Morgan Frost, and then it's kind of, question marks after that. Pairings, Cates, Luchanko. They need some offense from Couturier, as even if it's just 50 some points. So what I noticed the other night, even though Couturier was listed as fourth line left wing, and in my opinion, if I'm trying to get in the psyche of John Tortorella, this is what I think he's doing. So I don't think maybe he'll go to some of the younger guys and tell them what he expects, maybe because they don't know. But Couturier has been in the league for, I mean, he's a veteran, right? I don't even know how long he's been in the league now, 12 years, something. He's been around forever. Um, maybe Tortorella has a different way of trying to get to these guys. Like, I don't see him as a guy that's going to go to Couturier and say, hey, you need to play better. It's Couturier, I think, should already know that. All he's got to do is look at his stat sheet, right? So how can Tort send a message to Couturier? Well, your 800th game, dude, you're starting out, at least on the lineup card, as fourth line left wing. When's the last time we've seen Couturier play left wing? So there's the message there, right? Like, hey, you're not getting anything past me. You need to play better. And I know, like, that's where the disrespectful part comes in. So then what I'm assuming Tortorella wants is for Couturier to spark up the conversation with Tortorella. He's trying to get his attention, and now it's on Couturier to say, hey, what's up with that? And there's a conversation that needs to be had. But the psychological aspect is Couturier needs to put his ego aside in order to do that, right? And a lot of players can't do that. And I think if you're the leader of a team, you need to be willing to put your hurt feelings or your ego and all, all the emotion to the side and go to the coach and say, what do you need? What am I not doing that you need to see more of? And get on the same page. But then I understand the other side. It's like, well, why can't the coach just go and do that? Why does he need to do this? I think it's as simple as he wants the player to come to him. He's trying to break down that ego and then rebuild him psychologically, potentially. So that's my thoughts. But then I also get, this guy just had off-season surgeries, coming off 2 back surgeries. Can you cut him a break a little bit? And Jack, you say it a lot. Sure, this is a rebuild, but sometimes we get the sense that Tortorella is like foot on the gas pedal here. Like, they're going to try to win as many games as they can. He wants to keep Luchanko up, yada, yada. Look, I think he's a people guy, and obviously I think he cares about the health of players. The impression that I get is, look, you're healthy. You had the surgery. We need you. Whether that's right or wrong, I think can be debated, but that's kind of the at least the impression that I'm getting right now. Does that make sense?
I mean, that's probably the best way to put it if you're Tortorella, which is fine. Like, I get that. If you understand that you need the player because the center depth is rough, like, you'll have Frost, Paling, you could have a whole conversation about Paling, and then there's not much else except for Luchanko, who's up here. Maybe would have been sent back otherwise. Maybe he is going to be here for at least 9 games. We'll see. Based on Danny Briere's comments, I don't think so. Or I do think so, 9 games rather, and Torts will be the one pushing it to be longer. But like, that's if the player's healthy to me. It's like, look, I know you're older. That you might not be here when this team is ready to really rock, or you might not be the same player, but we need you. But like, when you put in all these surgeries and whatnot, and how serious it was, how does this team not have like a meeting between Coots, the coach, the GM, even another advocate in there for Coots, and be like, we need to manage your workload here. We saw what happened last year. You've now added another very serious surgery onto that. Like, we're going to take it easy with you. Like, this, there should be no surprises. It should be like a doctor. They should have a game plan of exactly what they're going to do. Like, instead, it's all this, like, they're surprised when this stuff happens. Like, that's idiotic to me. I don't understand. Like, how do you not have a clear, it's your captain. This isn't a young kid that you want to grow a pair and to walk into your office. Like, that work, I felt that worked for Frost. He's a much younger player. He has no clout in the league compared to Coots. Coots was just named the captain. It's like, once he was named the captain, they started doing all the stuff you do to a young kid, and I understand the whole, well, if it could happen to the captain, it could happen to anybody. It's John Tortorella. We already know it can happen to anybody. It's like, and now we're getting to a point where it's like, now it's just disrespectful at this point. And I don't know, if I can usually see the method to Tortorella's madness, which most times I can, this is one of those things, like, I can almost see it, but the way he went about it was way wrong. It's way wrong. All you're doing is driving a wedge between the play, which brings me. Can we put on our tinfoil hats for just 1 second, Jim? Just 1 second. Let's say you truly believe Coots is cooked. It's unfair. I still think you got to give him the season and go into next, and then we'll see. But let's say you think he's cooked, because it's been a while since he's been a really productive player. Say you think he's cooked, right? He's got an albatross of a contract that you can't move on from. You've already burned a year of Mishkov's contract because he came over 2 years earlier than you expected, which is fine. Just get him here. Yeah, you may do the same with Luchanko. When the time comes to re-sign your own guys, like Forrester, like Urson, like they already signed Tippett. Michkov is only going to be in 2 years or 3 years rather. Like, there's going to come a time when you want to go for the free agents that you need to fill out your team, and maybe there's a big name, a big fish out there, and re-sign your own guys. And you got this albatross. What's Coots make? 7.75?
Something like that.
And
Yeah.
Isn't this not the first year of the 8 years, or is this the second year? Anyway, it's very early into the contract. So if you were to buy him out just because he's nothing more than a third, fourth line center, you cannot have that contract on your hands. You buy him out, it's way too expensive. It don't work. It's way too expensive for way too long. So your next best option is to trade him and obviously eat some money, because even then it's pretty tough. Well, he's got no trade clause. How do you make him waive that? You make his life miserable here. Now, that is definitely tinfoil hat. I get it. I know. Rabbit hole, whole thing. But it's the only thing that makes sense to be outright disrespectful to your captain this consistently. We are in 5 games of the regular season, and we're already talking about this Scoop shit. Already. It's been 5 games. He said it himself. Coots has been up and down like everybody else. Well, why is he being sent on the fourth line then if everybody else been up and down? Now, I know that's not true. I know it's not everybody. It's a handful of guys. You don't want to throw anybody under the bus, unless, of course, your name is fourth line center. So it's one of those things where it's like it's too heavy on a Coots. It's way too much punishment. It's way too much attention spotlight, and just there's a way to do things, and it looks like they're purposely not choosing to do things that way. And there's got to be a reason for that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how things play out. And you mentioned earlier, maybe it's one of those coaching tactics where you get all the players rallying around Couturier and they start playing for each other despite the coach kind of thing. Look, if that happens here, I think it could backfire on Tortorella. And then you got to worry about, was it Torts the one that was, created the culture? Can the culture disappear just like that? I don't know. So, but that's certainly something I think we could keep an eye on. And I hope Tortorella is not going down that avenue to start the season, because that's how last season ended. I think there were a few things for the collapse last year. The trading of Sean Walker, and then they kind of changed the way they were playing games for some reason. And then Torch started to push those, can I make them all hate me to rally around each other kind of thing. And I don't know if that was the right thing to do at that point in the season, because, look, you mentioned tinfoil hats. They're kind of starting this year like they ended last year, like they've looked good in spurts, but they flat out have gotten beaten. Like they've lost. They're 1-3-1. They had a chance to win a couple of those games. Did they deserve to win? I wouldn't say they deserve to win. Like, they could have easily lost just as easily if they could have won, So there are, look, it's easy to chalk it up saying, it's the first 5 games of the year, no big deal. But there could be some concerning things here, like we're not just seeing something, and, I think especially Flyers fans are particularly smart. Like, we know what we're watching kind of thing. And look, they don't look good. And last year out of the gate, they looked good, right? Maybe it took them a little bit to really get going, but they didn't look bad out of the gate. And I'm not saying they look bad now, but they don't look the same as they did last year. And I think maybe we were expecting that, and then we were expecting the same with Michkov added in, basically. I would say close to that, right?
And it's tough because you were so good last year for so long. What are your subtractions? Well, Hart. So your goalie tandem, but Person looks good so far. He's probably been the team's best player so far. And then I guess Coots played good right up until about January, February. Then he fell off, and then Walker. So, and I guess you swapped Stahl for Eric Johnson for what that's worth. But then you go into this season, you added Michkov, and to an extent, you added Luchanko. So I mean, I don't know. Overall, it's really not that much of turnover, except for, I guess, Walker deserves a lot more credit, and Sealer to that point too. We'll see what happens when he comes back, but I'm not going to hit the goaltending too hard, although they are overplaying Kolosov a little bit. Or I'm sorry, I guess I'm ready for him, even though he's doing funny things with the Phantoms. Yeah, so if you go check out a pass he made with the Phantoms and how it wound up in the back of his net in no time. With Fedotov, they have to figure it out because Kolosov kind of forcing their hand a little bit. So they are starting him out of obviously they're going to start him in one of these Washington games, but any back-to-back. But outside of that, he didn't need to start, especially this early. They have to see what they have in a guy, and so their backup goalie is just as big as a mystery, but Urson's still there. So it's like, and then you add Michkov, who he probably leads the team in points. He's got a point per game. I think he might be short. He might be short one now. Yeah, let me tell you.
Let's get into the goalie thing because that's the next question here. So let's play the clip and then we'll get into that.
Ivan's obviously struggled a little bit. Are you confident he can get going and maybe?
I don't know. We're gonna have to see. Whether it's him, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just worried about the first game.
What's the evaluation been of Jett Luchanko?
Not exactly a vote of confidence for your goalie there.
That was almost as bad as when he asked about, I think it was last year, not about Peterson. It was Sandstrom. They had a rough game, and they asked him about it, and he just went.
Yeah.
It was just about as bad as that. When it comes to goaltending, and a lot of coaches are like this, if they don't get good goaltending, they're typically pissed off. And there's one thing from your goaltender being left out to dry and having a bad game. And Fedotov had 2 bad games. And these are the kind of goals where you're just like, here we go. Like, come on, man. The whole team's going to feel the effects of that one. That's got to be infuriating. And when you have a guy like Kolosov, who, I mean, I got to take a look at his stats, but from what I've been hearing, has not been good with the Phantoms. Knocking on the door because of his own whiny crap. It's just like, when are you going to get it going? Last year when you came over, there was the excuse that you came over, you weren't ready, you had the wrong equipment, it was too big, and now you've had a full preseason, you're ready to go, and now what's the excuse? Because a lot of what I'm hearing from other people is he's too tall, that kind of goalie is not in play anymore, he's not athletic enough, and just might not be talented enough. The guy was a 7th round pick, if you recall. I mean, now, did he play well after his BS he went through? Absolutely, but it's the KHL, and it's also the goaltending position. For all we know, it's all in his head. He just can't play, but he's got to figure it out. Got to figure it out soon. It's the NHL. Going to stand for not for long. Oh, that's the NFL. Not how long? I don't know.
Maybe in Russian, it's not here long.
Not here long. There you go. Perfect. Not here long. Why do you have to be mad? So
yeah, he's got to figure it out, man. They look flat out. The backup goalie position could undermine this entire season for the Flyers.
It's just when things start to snowball. If you're playing well, Sam Ersson against Edmonton, they should have won that game of regulation. They should have had a much better chance in the overtime. He stopped the best player in the world on a freaking breakaway in overtime, but nobody got back. And, they're not even in that game if Fedotov is playing, and if say that you lose a game like that to Edmonton and then you shuffle out Fedotov, who's given up goals from the blue line with no traffic, it's like, okay, well, now we're 0-2 just like that, and who else knows what they did before? Maybe they got a really big game coming up against a really good team. That's how things snowball. Like, you need this guy to spell you, to pick you up, not just fill in when you're not there. And if that's all he can do, then they're going to have to see, because a guy like Kolosov and his goofy contract demands or just general demands, you're going to have to probably get him up here sooner. So now the amount of games you have with Kolosov or with Fedotov are smaller.
Yeah, it's a problem. And if you guys haven't already, make sure you head over to hwhockey.net. You can check out the short episode we did with Jason Martinez. We actually did a couple episodes with Jason Martinez. One to kind of talk about the Flyers goalie pipeline. And then we did one on Friday. It was an emergency goalie episode because we got to see a couple games out of Ivan Fedotov. And looking back on the Calgary game, Flyers were a lot of the issue that night. Doesn't mean Fedotov couldn't have been the guy to bail him out once or twice. But the Seattle game, for me, he lost the game for the Flyers pretty flat out, So, look, it's been 2 games this year. Hoagie mentions in the comments it's been 5 freaking games. Look, the guy's got a goals against average of over 5 and a save percentage of 8.15 in
What's
those
that?
5 games.
What I read, 10 goals in 6 periods or something?
5 periods, yeah, because he didn't play
5.
the third.
Oh, you're right. He got yanked. Yeah, 10 goals in 5 periods. I mean, this is how I feel. But when it comes to Fedotov alone, Kolosov, even though he's not even playing that well, is still pushing the Flyers because of his demands. So this is a real thing. And not to mention, they've drifted how many other goalies come up the pipeline who look good. So it's like they got to figure some things out here. And this is a season to do it, honestly. Look, did I have them making the playoffs? Yeah, I think they could sneak in. Do I expect them to do anything in the playoffs? Not really. This is not a contender year. This is still a fact-finding year. And we're finding some shit out early, it seems. So maybe sooner rather than later. And that's kind of the point. Like you either shit or get off the pot. It's time. It's go time. It's the NHL. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of figuring things out during the season or figuring things out in the NHL. And look, you can say whatever. I don't know what this says about me, but it's part of the reason why. Like, look, fine. Luchanko looks good at times with the Flyers. But I don't think the NHL is the time to figure things out. Let him find himself out.
That is a different animal that I'm referring to.
Yeah, sure. No, but I get what you're saying, though. I get what you mean. But Fedotov, so here's what I'm gathering, because being up at the game the other night, I had the opportunity to talk to quite a few different people, and I brought up Fedotov on purpose. And I think I was chatting with Colin Newby at one point. And he was talking to, I can't remember the name, but it was a goalie guy. And this person mentioned that playing goaltender in the KHL is an entirely different world than playing goaltender in the NHL. So, for someone like, I'll say myself specifically, who, look, just stand in front of the puck and make sure it doesn't go past you. Like, I'm one of those guys. Apparently the game is played a lot different in the KHL. And so, damn, another goal just got by Fedotov. So look, 2 games is not enough to say this guy's terrible, even though he has been terrible. The Flyers haven't been great in front of him either. So we have no choice but to say, okay, well, let's see. Right. And look, I'm all about let's give guys a chance. But if he's flat out losing you games, Jack, how long of a leash can you give? You can't give a guy that's losing you games 20 games to prove that he can play in the NHL. You can't do it.
No, not if he's this bad for this long. I mean, look, if he does this for the next 2 games, he got definitely one of the Capitals game and then whichever else. If we're still feeling this way, it's going to be like, suddenly it's like almost out of October now. And I know the Kolosov isn't going to wait too long unless he's absolutely horrendous and is like, maybe I'll give it another month. But they're going to have to figure something out. Like, you cannot be giving away games. And he's probably going to get a few games against some clunkers. And you got to figure that Torts is not going to be happy about this, as he's done everything to make this team try to be as best as they can this year. Keeping Jett Luchanko around was definitely one of those things. Lord knows what else. I guess putting Coots on the 4th line and potentially benching him in the future, and Lord knows who else. He's going to want to push for see something else. He's like, I can't keep doing this to the team. They fought really hard, and they came back and got a point against the Rangers, and then we go out there the next night against Montreal or something, and we get smoked because Fedotov gives up 4 out of 5 easy goals. Like, it's a problem. Like,
Yeah.
there's too much talent out there to stick with something bad. The Flyers have failed to realize that for years. So hopefully this regime, you bite the bullet. We know why he got as much money as Fedotov did. We all know. Come on, let's not be silly here.
Right. All right. Let's I think we're going to get into Luchanko next year. So let's see what else we got.
Seems like he's maybe fighting it a little offensively.
He makes just like everybody else. Really, he makes some really good plays. He's made a lot of really good plays on his backhand. Good plays, struggles at times. Makes some really good defensive plays, struggles at times. He's 18, but I still like what he brings, and we're going to keep on evaluating him and see where we go from there.
You've talked about how good this room is, and Scott's a big part of it.
All right. So maybe it was just the day or the moment, but to me, he sounded a little bit less enthusiastic when talking about Luchanko and maybe a little bit more realistic. Does that sound right, Jack?
Absolutely. It sounds like a guy. Look, Luchanko did enough to be here for now, but can you really say he's done enough to stay here? If you want to compare him to the rest of the team, maybe you have a case, but to actually play in the NHL, I should probably go back. This was nice. This was encouraging. Having him played against Connor McDavid, huge kudos. He did wonderful. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of goals he's like, I wouldn't say directly responsible for, but that pretty much led to the scoring chance that led to the goal. There's a couple of times that's happened. But at the same time, like, I thought he had his first goal. I was so upset that did not hit off of his stick. They hit off the defenseman's stick and went in. So he's definitely had a play. I can't remember which team it was against. We had like 2 shots alone in front. And I was, oh my God, came off the couch and hit the floor. I wanted him to score so bad just because he looks so good, so young. But at the end of the day, he is so young. And there's no point to potentially, I don't know how it works. I just know it can happen. Potentially screw up his development for the now, as Briere said, when we're more concerned about 5 years from now.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. Like all the factors for sending him back, I think, outweigh the reasons for keeping him here now, right? And it's just like it's just how it is, unfortunately, right? Like if he was a first overall, like top 3 pick or something, I think there'd be obviously a better argument. But look, the team's not ready to win. Will he help them be better? Look, they started out 1-3-1. That I don't know. Maybe he'll get comfortable as the season goes on. I don't know. Hey, look, I'm sure you are too. Like I'm fine either way with this. Like if he stays with the Flyers, fine. Are there cons to him staying with the Flyers through after 9 games? Absolutely. Are there benefits to him going back to juniors? Are there any cons for him going back to juniors? None that I think are going to stunt his development and growth. Look, he got his cup of coffee. He'll get his, maybe 6, 7, 8, 9 games, and he's going to take everything he learned. He'll go back to junior. He learned, they're going to send him back with a program. He's going to learn how to eat right. He's going to learn how to work out right. And he's going to come back next year more developed mentally and physically. He's going to know what to expect. To me, I think that's the right plan. But, there's no right or wrong, I don't think. I'll bring this up just for the sake of bringing it up. And, if we want to talk about it, I mentioned, last week, I think there's less risk injury-wise for him to go back to junior. I think playing in the NHL at his age, his size, there's greater injury risk. And if we're worried about development, if he's hurt and misses an extended period of time, not only is he not helping the team, but his development's going to get pushed back, and I don't think that's something worth risking, to be honest,
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It seems like Torts is starting to see that. Doesn't have much to work with argument wise anymore. So he's trying to be as nice as possible while trying to keep the conversation open, but seeing that he's probably going back.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I still think it was a good thing. I think Luchanko showed me with his poise and his maturity that he's the kind of guy that could take this experience and not go back to Guelp and Gelp, whatever the hell it's called, and
Well,
Guelp and pout. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I think he would be like, I now realize what it takes to stay and stick in the NHL, and I'm going to work on this, that, and the other thing while being more dominant at what I'm already good at. And then when the off-season training program comes, I can see him staying in Jersey and working out with the team at the team facility and just being another absolute standout in the training camp and the preseason. And then maybe next year he's actually pushing to make the team full time because he has what it takes, and that only makes the player better. But I really see what I like things of this player, not the whole player, but just things, and having to make the team and keeping him based on that. It makes the player kind of, in my opinion, go like, oh, well, I did enough to make it. Why improve? And not everybody's like that, but like that tells me he should go back. That's the only thing I can see. Unless if he were to come in here and blow the doors off, we're having a different conversation. That clearly is not what happened.
No.
So I think he takes the experience as a good thing, goes back, and this time next year, we have a hell of a center on the team.
Yeah. Here's a question from Fancy before we move on. What happens when he comes back next year and he's the same player? I'm going to assume you mean skill-wise there. And yeah, I think it's really kind of that simple, right? If he's the same player. But I also think that's not necessarily a bad thing because he's a pretty good player now, and he's only going to be 19 by the time he gets here. Yeah, I mean, look, this is a kid. He's going to have time. Like, I think we're both kind of saying the same things here. Like, this is all a good experience. There's no negative to any of this. Fancy mentions, I wish he could play in the AHL. And
something on that real quick.
Yeah,
I don't know
they're coming to some agreement here.
Yes, which they may rip up come like playoff time, which would allow 19-year-olds to play in the AHL based on a new agreement they are potentially talking about. If they can come to an agreement, that would be great. He could, if say he doesn't, he is the same player, and he just really needs more work against men. Well, guess who plays in the AHL? A whole lot of men, So, like, instead of going back to juniors, he could play against potentially some NHL caliber players, and then find his way back up either midseason or the next year. Either way, it'd be a very good step forward based on what he could possibly need if he is the same player when he comes back. I also agree with Lyndon 49 here. His poise tells me everything about this. So those listening and not watching, Lyndon says, to me, he isn't one to bitch. I think he will accept going back. That's what I alluded to earlier. I said, I don't think he's one to pout. I don't think he's going to Wade Allison it or Vorobiev it when he goes to the Phantoms and completely forget how to play hockey. And then, boop, they're out of the league. He seems the exact opposite. He'll take it in stride. Look, I'm already way ahead of schedule. I'm more than proved my draft slot, which is awesome in its own right. And I know what this team needs. I know what I am. I know the players, the coaching staff, the management, they know me up front and center. I'm going to be back here, and they're going to expect me to be back here. So, I mean, that's a good thing to go into, and he strikes me as a type who will learn from the experience and not be demoralized from it.
Yep, totally agree. All right, let's move on to our next point here. And I'm thinking this is going to be law, and I kind of forget where this response goes to the question. So let's find out together.
Some of that is because of the off-the-ice stuff he does, the charities he's involved with. When you have a guy who's that self-aware and uses his platform the right way, do you hope that kind of permeates the room and the younger guys kind of see it? And when you're kind of building that unit, how much of an impact does it have when he's that involved in the community? And kind of,
it's a big part for young players to understand. I think that's a really big part of being a pro. It's not always the on the ice stuff. It's how you carry yourself off the ice. I think when you're a professional player, football, hockey, baseball, whatever it may be, and you're in the community, you are representing your organization all the time. And there's not too many guys better than that guy as far as the way he carries himself. And I'm early in my career, I didn't realize how important that was because all I wanted to do was coach the game, not do any media, right? Not do any media, coach the game, not worry about anything else other than that game. It's so much more important as when you get older, you realize you've made some mistakes along the way, and that is certainly one of them. I think he's a great example for some of our young guys. That silly shirt he wears. I mean, it's just such a great example for a. No, I did not.
Ogie's probably crying after that comment.
Yesterday was vital and important because you could finally get their feet back on the ground and move.
Okay, so before they get into Saturday's game, look, that's what he thinks of Scott Lawton, and I don't want to say Scott Lawton's never getting traded, but I don't think he's ever getting traded, Jack. What do you think?
I'm inclined to agree.
I don't think he's going anywhere. Like
I was already at the point based on the offers they received, allegedly, that the fact that he's still here is baffling in its own right. But then you start to hear more and more, and it's true. It's not like it's fake. Like, he is a great guy. He's great for the community. He's great for the locker room and whatnot. And it's not like he's, a guy we're hanging on to. He's still an effective player in his own right.
Yeah.
And it's just, he's Mr. Flyers. Like, after he might be the mascot for a while and Gritty might be temporarily retired when Lawton retires, like, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. I just kills me when you could get for a guy like that, at least at the time. You already have a depth chart issue and he only compounds that issue. I know he's a good dude, but like, at what point do you have to cut the cord too and let this team be these new age, these new era players, let it be their team? Like, when does it become their team? Michkov is here. Luchanko's somewhat here. You have all the other young guys, your Yorks. Even Sandheim's played 500 games, for Christ's sake. Like, that's insane to me. You have your leadership group. At some point, winning is going to trump culture. And every time they're not good, they have a bad record, which obviously last year doesn't really count. The likelihood of a lot getting traded rises, but they're going to have to be awfully bad for him to get moved, because it feels like he's just a guy. And Briere has said to him in the past, like, we'll only accept a deal for you that we value is more valuable to us than what you bring to the team. And it sounds they've already turned down a first rounder plus. So, like, Jesus Christ, what else do you need? I mean, there's a lot a lot more talented players have gone for a lot less. So it's gone to my head. He retires a Flyer.
That's what it certainly seems like. Yeah. I just thought the way Tortorella spoke of him was kind of cemented that, right? Like, so I don't know. We'll see. I'm a big Scott Lawton guy, but I understand at the same time, like, if you get 2 first-round picks for Scott Lawton or even a first-round pick, you might need to look at that a little bit. So yeah, that's all.
A second plus, I'm looking at that. For Christ's sake, he's a bottom 6 player. Like, Jesus, I love what he does on the PK. I love what he does for the locker room. He's a funny guy. He's a great guy. And I would love to keep that around as long as possible. But, like, at what point do you like, we're going to decide to win some games soon? And that's what it comes down to.
Hey, they don't figure out the backup goalie position and they tumble down the standings when it comes trade deadline, then maybe we talk about it again. Because what's the point of having good culture if you're going to be bottom 5 team,
Exactly.
So we'll see. I'm sure we'll get an answer to that. Well, within the next 2 years at least. So, all right, let's move on here. We're coming up on an hour.
Do you see it that way, that at least now they're working on sort of a little bit of rest?
Yeah. And it's no excuse, but it's National Hockey League works this way. Yeah, when you have no respect in the league, as we do not, you get the schedule that you get. And I don't want to put all the blame on our home opener on that, but that's a tough game. That's a tough game for us. Having said that, I don't think we're dead on even in the games we've played prior. I think we've had some good minutes, but we've been very inconsistent. Just as far as the checking forward and just the hardness of our game. Again, 5 games in, I'm sure a lot of coaches and teams are trying to struggle to find their identity too, but we just don't have a lot of time. We need to get at it right away and get back to where our standard is.
All right. So there you go. So it seemed like Tortorella acknowledged that that Saturday night's home opener, the Flyers weren't at 100%, and they kind of got the break speed off them a little bit. Vancouver seemed to jump on them early and kind of never. Well, they let the foot off the brake. I just want to point out that Vancouver was up 27-11 in shots at one point, and I think the Flyers came back and almost evened it up in shots. Like, I think towards the end of the second period, Vancouver started backing off, and the Flyers just couldn't get anything past Lankinen.
They
hit
shut
the
it
post a
down.
few times.
Vancouver shut it down.
Yeah,
Like they were like, yeah, we're gonna take this 3-0 lead and get out of here.
Yeah.
Not much going on in the third. Yeah,
pretty much. So
that it was interesting. Well, one thing that Tortorella said I did not see coming is respect in the league. Is that he was referring to the Flyers as a whole organization? And if so, like when Snyder was alive, we know that was not the case. Is it? I guess that's what a decade of being a joke of the league will do to you.
Yeah,
that they don't have respect. I did not see that comment coming. So, especially from a guy who's been here. This is his third year. We've been here for quite a long time. It was interesting. You're telling me that the teams that they don't think are going to be good or they don't give a shit about, that they get the shit end of the stick on the schedule, because this isn't the only time. There's been a lot of times the Flyers have started out west to start their season. I don't know if that was a dig at that or what, but that was, or just maybe the quick return game.
I think that's more so what it was. Yeah, it was kind of just like, in so many words, the Flyers got to play a game. Their home opener the day after they get back from a West Coast trip. Screw it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
They didn't really do him any favors there.
I guess kudos for Coots for calling out the schedule makers and potentially the league. Against the league. I like that though, because that's funny. We know the league definitely has their favorites. If you're saying, oh, you're one of those guys, you're a clown. All you got to do is look at history and know that the league definitely favors certain teams. Now, I won't say they hate on anybody, but they definitely favor certain teams. That is for sure. Pittsburgh and Chicago. So, with that, it was telling. It's truthful. And I am glad that Torts is, for the most part, pretty transparent.
Seems that way.
Yeah, because otherwise some of these in the past have been useless. Unless Fletcher said something stupid, like, oh, well, trading's hard, and I have this app on my phone. So, but hey, they got it. We'll see. They're now, all the excuses are gone now. Do we know if Erson's starting the first game of the back-to-back?
I'm almost positive that he's going to start game one. And look, I wouldn't hate to see him start both games at the back-to-back, tell you the truth.
Me neither. I don't think they can because of Kolosov, Fedotov situation. I think you'll definitely see Fedotov in one of those. But they'll be without Luchanko, which should not be the biggest deal. And we'll see how they do. They're home. Are they home for the first game? So home on home.
Yeah, they
I would
are.
assume they are. Okay.
They are.
So they're home. They've had rest. No excuses. Get out there and play and get your shit together before this Saturday, because I am taking my 3.5-year-old son to his first Flyers game against the Wild. And this is going to make him a fan for life, like it did for me back when this organization had clout. They were a young, struggling team back then, but they did have a superstar. His name was Eric Lindros. He was very young, and they managed to make me fall in love with the team that I literally bleed orange. So you have to do the same thing for my son. You have a young stud in Matei Michkov, and I'll be wearing his jersey. Yes, it came in. I left it upstairs. And we're going to, they better get their shit. Just win the game. Just win the goddamn game. You don't need to win 5-0. I don't need Michkov to have a hat trick. Just beat the Wild at home with the crowd going nuts, because that's what these fans are brought up on. That's what I was brought up on. They're good enough to do it. Enough of the excuses. Get your shit together and do it.
All right, well said. Let's wrap up the show on that. So one last time, boys and girls, give us a subscribe and a follow. Listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and make sure to subscribe. Smash the like button and chime in the comment sections. It really helps us to get more eyes and ears in front of more listeners and viewers. So really appreciate that. Set alerts for weekly shows. Head over to hwhockey.net to check out all of our latest episodes and articles. And if you guys want more Flyers talk to wrap up your Monday night, go check out the Pod Street Bullies. They are live on Twitter and YouTube. As always, thanks for hanging out. Have a good rest of your night, everyone. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
Real quick. Lyndon, great comment that that's my favorite Flyers game of all time. but because of exactly what you just said. Not that they just beat the Russians 4-1, and they were the only team to beat the Russians, because every team in the league hated the Flyers and cried and whined and complained until the Flyers did what they did to those teams, to the Russians, and kept the NHL as the best league in the world. That was the ultimate Flyers game, baby. They were Batman for a night. It was great.
There you go. All right, everyone. We'll talk to you next Monday, hopefully after a 4-game win streak. See you guys.